Hey, everybody, it's Jamie from Lemon Rebellion, and I am thrilled today to be here with Dr. Rabia Subhani. How are you doing, Rabia?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you doing, Jamie?
I am wonderful. I'm pleased to get to talk with you today. I want to tell everyone more about you. Dr. Rabia Suhani is a licensed psychologist and certified mindfulness teacher. She began her career as a neuropsychologist and then had a spiritual epiphany in 2013, which led to a complete change in her personal and professional life. She became immersed in mindfulness and found such a deep sense of peace and inner joy that she wanted to share it with others. She also does mindfulness based life coaching focused on self compassion, joyful living, and high performance, as well as a program that she runs called Mindful Village that teaches mindful parenting to families of neurodiverse children. And she is presenting at Lemon Rebellion this September. So, Rabia, you're going to be talking to us about mindfulness and self compassion, right? How important is it for women to practice self compassion and mindfulness?
Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to tell you how important it is. I think as women, we are so immersed in our roles as mother, wife, worker, doing household work. Just with all of the things that we have going on, we tend to forget about ourselves and we put ourselves second, sometimes third, and everything else has to come before us. And as a result of that, we constantly are depleting our soul battery, as I like to call it, and not taking the time to recharge. So if we just take out a few minutes a day to learn really simple, basic mindfulness practices, and then practice self-compassion, which I think is so important. I think it makes such a huge difference. And, as you were talking about my bio, when I went on my own spiritual journey, I didn't realize how little self-compassion I had for myself and for everything I was going through. And once I started doing these practices, it made such a profound impact on me that I felt called to teach other women how to navigate this treacherous journey of living where we're not taking care of ourselves and we're constantly put on the back burner. And so I think it's so important that we just first of all realize that we are not taking care of ourselves, and then secondary realize how important it is that we should, because we're not doing we're not able to be, we can't show up as good parents or good spouses or good anything if we're not taking care of ourselves. So we really need to put ourselves first.
If you had to define, we hear the word self compassion and it's got two words in it. And I think it's easy to understand at maybe one very superficial level what that means. But how would you define self compassion? What does it mean to you?
So one of the ways that I show people what exactly self-compassion means is I have them do this quick little exercise where they tell me about how they treat, say, a best friend who would tell them they were having a difficult time. And so I'll have them write down everything that they can think of. And then I say, well, how would you do it if the same thing happened to you? How do you treat yourself? What are the words that you say to yourself? What's your tone? And everybody's surprised when they do this exercise. They're like, wow, I didn't realize I was so tough on myself.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that is the very definition of self-compassion, is giving yourself the same compassion that you would give your best friend or a loved one or somebody who came to you and said, I'm blaming myself for this, or I have guilt over this, or, I'm just doing horribly at whatever. But when you switch that um, emphasis on and do it to yourself, you're like, wow, well, why is it so difficult for me to show myself the same level of affection and compassion that I can easily give to somebody else? Because we're so tough on ourselves. We blame ourselves for things, and we just don't take the time to, show ourselves some love.
hmm Do you have any sense, and you must, of why are we so hard on ourselves? Why is it that we do this to ourselves instead of just naturally being more self compassionate?
I think it's a lot of things. A lot of people have perhaps have had a life history of being put down. So they've always just been tougher on themselves. They feel like they don't live up to other people's standards. There are life stresses, there are work stresses. There are just so many opportunities in today's world where you can feel less than. And I think unless you have built up incredible self-confidence and have, perhaps been doing these practices or have had some kind of a really perfect upbringing, you're not, you're liable to fall into one, at least some place where you don't show yourself the self-compassion that you should. For a lot of people, like for me, it was going through a divorce. I always was very self-confident. But when I went through the divorce, I was constantly questioning myself. Was it something I did, or how, was there a lack in me, there absolutely wasn't. But when you're in the moment and you're in an acute, stressful situation, you're not thinking clearly. And that's when all of these doubts and questions come up, and you're like, what did I do wrong? And then you may be questioning yourself as a parent. There's a lot of areas in your life where you can question your worth. And I think with the way society is these days, with all of the peer pressures through social media, we're constantly questioning ourselves. And that's why I think today, especially, I think self-compassion is so needed.
Yeah, absolutely. What if, with the clients that you've worked with and in your own journey, what are some of the changes that you've seen begin to happen in someone when they're able to embrace a practice of self-compassion?
It's really beautiful, because when you start to realize that the things that you've been thinking about yourself are not really, they're not true. You tell yourself all sorts of stories. And when you start questioning that, was that really true, or was that a story that I told myself? And when you come to the realization that maybe things weren't like I thought they were, you start to gain back your self-confidence. You start to appreciate yourself for your strengths. And one of these things I love to do is there's a website where you can test your personality, like character strengths. And if you go to this website and you find your character strengths, you can use those strengths to then in your life build on your own positive qualities and use those for different areas of your life, like work or home or whatever. And so when I show, I work mostly with women. So when I show women this site and they go to it and they find out their strengths, they're like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And they start using those strengths. And that also helps build their self-confidence. So as you see these women start coming out of their shells, and they're like, this was a story I was telling myself. I've always been strong. I've always had this inner strength, or whatever the case may be. And so it's such a huge shift, because it may take small steps to get there, but eventually everybody's going upwards on the trajectory of self-confidence and inner strengths and positive spiritual and developmental growth. So there's never a negative. It's always an uphill thing.
That's awesome. Sounds like there's a real piece of it that is about knowing yourself in that truest sense of the word.
Yes, absolutely. I think once you start to delve into what were the stories that you told yourself that got you to the point of not having that self-compassion or self-confidence, and you start dismantling those stories, and you start realizing your own strengths, you come out of that shell and you're like, wow, that was not true, and I'm not that person. You have to do a lot of inner work, but I think just the fact that you acknowledge that it's there is the first big step. Just knowing that and it's okay to have self-compassion. A lot of women feel guilty about putting themselves first. Oh, my child needs me. I work a lot with families that have neurodiverse children. So a lot of those parents are very, like they feel like their child needs their attention. And I'm like, well, if you don't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of your child? It's like the oxygen mask analogy in the airplane.
Yeah.
You have to put your own mask on first. And so when they realize that they can put themselves first, it makes a huge difference in how they start showing up.
Oh, that's awesome. And at Lemon Rebellion, you're going to have a session within the event. What can people expect from that session? What will you guide them through? What will they experience?
So yeah, I'm really excited about this, because I'm approaching it from the place that most people there will not have known a lot about self-compassion practices. And so what I'm going to do is give a little introduction about what is self-compassion, what does it look like, how can you show up for yourself and do some of these practices. I'm going to teach them some practices and give them a few exercises like the one I was telling you about, the best friend one. So they'll get a taste of, oh, so I really don't have as much self-compassion as I thought. Mm-hmm. And then how can I change that? How can I start doing more things that are easy to implement in day-to-day living?
That's awesome. And I understand you're going to be sharing a little workbook as well with some of the exercises.
Yes, I thought it might be easier, instead of having everybody, taking notes or whatever, to just give them a downloadable workbook that's got the exercises in there, and then maybe a little journaling where they can keep track of how you're doing your self-compassion practice for today. and what does it look like? And I'll give them a couple of examples of self-compassion practices in there.
Oh, awesome. Oh, I love what you're going to be sharing because it's so actionable. We'll get to reflect on it, do a couple exercises ourselves, and really begin to feel what it feels like to be a little bit more self-compassionate and have a guide that can lead us further down the path as well when we need it. So again, Dr. Rabia Subhani, I'm so excited to have you at Lemon Rebellion. Thank you for being part of what we're doing. And for the rest of you, join us at Lemon Rebellion. It's September 19th to the 25th. It is a live virtual summit hosting both Dr. Rabia Subhani as well as 30 other speakers, life coaches, and wellness practitioners for a live online experience that will equip women to navigate major life changes successfully with more resilience, joy, ease, and self-compassion. So thank you again, Rabia, for being here, and can't wait to see you at Lemon Rebellion.
Thank you so much. I can't wait either.
Yay!